Welcome back to Small College Conversations. I'm Jim Abbott. I'm the founder of the business of Small College Athletics. Today, I'm joined by an old friend of mine, Miles Gallagher. Miles is the Senior Business Development Officer for Teamworks. Miles, thanks so much for being here today.
Jim, I really appreciate you inviting me on to the podcast, and longtime listener. So this is exciting to be on.
Well, great. We're glad to have you, Miles. And if you're a longtime listener, what you know is I always kind of try to start these conversations by hearing about people's path in athletics. And so why don't you just share a little bit about your background in sports and how you ended up as the athletic director at Millersville?
Yeah, so really just I was really fortunate, and so I ended up going to University of Pittsburgh out of high school, and had a journey of walk on at Pitt, and ended up transferring to a school called Millersville University, and so it was close to my hometown, and really had just a wonderful experience where it fit me both academically and athletically, and I was able to play for an amazing coach for 3 years, and really a part of a resurrection of rebuilding a program. And I got done with school, and I was going to study for the LSAT and go to law school, take a year off and do that. And they had a graduate assistant position open up that allowed me to coach as well as work in athletic administration. And so I jumped at it, and really the rest is history. I was able to get my hands really in everything, kind of that Division II model, and really, really fortunate. I get done with my master's at Millersville as well, and couldn't find a job in athletics. It's a hard place to crack into. And I get a call one day, and I'm working a really tough construction job. I'll put it that way, just to make ends meet. And the associate AD who hired me as his GA was leaving. And so the AD asked me to come on as an interim, overseeing the compliance office at Millersville. And fast forward a few years later, there were some transitions in leadership, and I was really the last one standing. And so, I can remember making that call to the senior leadership in Millersville, and just saying, look, I'm an alum. I care about this place. You guys know who I am. I have integrity, and, I can get you through this transition period. And I just want you to know you can trust me. And so I was 28, and I was told, hey, you can be the interim AD and work to get us through this. And 6 months as interim, and next thing you know, I'm AD. And so, I served as a Division II AD, started at 28 for almost 9 years, and just a really incredible experience to be at my alma mater, be able to lead that place, and really loved everything about it. I owe so much to Millersville, and just really happy to see how much of a great place it is even today.
Well, I love these stories because everyone's a little different. And I often tell young people the hardest part's getting started.
Yep.
Because literally in athletics, unless your last name is Steinbrenner, you got to start at the bottom and work your way up and have those experiences. And the other lesson is perseverance. Sometimes just persevering will provide an opportunity for you that you hadn't even imagined. So here's what I want to know now. You become an AD at 28 years old. What were some of the lessons that you learned about leading an athletic department?
Well, Jim, I'll share with you. We could probably sit here for an hour and have that conversation. And I was probably fortunate in a way that I was a little naive. Also having some institutional knowledge, I think, helped me. But really, there's probably like a few takeaways, I took. And the first was like, I think I had an idea of who I was as a leader, but I kind of had to mold that on the job, and always really evaluating like who I was. And, I think as I look back, and what I tried to accomplish was just trying to be authentic with building relationships, and really listening to individuals, having empathy, trying to connect on a deeper level, because ultimately, it not necessarily servant leadership, but really my focus is always about the people. And if I knew what made them tick, how I could show I had their back, that was the type of department that I wanted to lead. And I tried to lead by example in that way. So that was probably number one. And two is, clarity with communication is really key. There were many times where I think I said something. I go into the associate and be like, I feel like I've said this, multiple times. And the lesson I learned is clarity is so critical in a big organization. And so, over communicate, over communicate. And then lastly, I realized pretty early on not having organizational values was going to fail me in some way. And in talking to a lot of mentors and reading books and just trying to figure out, how do I do all this? And it just led me to like, we need to create who we are, not who Miles is, but who we are as a department. And, we dove in, we took just about a full year to really flesh out like our values, our mission, our vision, created clarity around those to make sure like it was crystal clear, like here are the expectations of how we live out our values. And then when times were tough, like, with the senior staff or there was a tough decision, like I would always just try to lean back on that, especially, there's complex decisions that have to be made. And when you have a values driven organization, like that's so critical in those tough moments to be able to fall back on.
Miles, I'm smiling as I'm listening to you. I'm going to make sure everyone in the BOSCA Leadership Academy listens to this conversation, because the very first session, the very first topic we talk about is understanding and defining your core values and your mission. And so I just love that you express that. I think too, it's so interesting that often people ascend to leadership and they almost fall into this dictatorial approach. I'm in charge now, so you must do what I say. And particularly in your case, when I think about a 28-year-old, and so you're overseeing 50-year-old coaches. And I'm sure, you would say that was a little daunting at times, that, oh my gosh, how do I tell them what to do, right?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had some really key coaches there that had, I would say, the ear of the rest of the staff, that I had positive relationships going back to when I was a graduate assistant or, an assistant AD for compliance. And I learned pretty quickly, like if I could get them to understand what I was doing before I would drop it to an entire staff meeting or something that had to be communicated over an email, and really hash it out with those key people, close doors. And then, 9 times out of 10, they'd have my back, or at least an understanding to be able to talk through those situations with their colleagues. And so, yeah, I had to learn a lot. I failed a lot. I had a president, vice president that I think allowed me to fail, which was also important to be in that role.
Well, that's excellent. If you don't take anything more out of this, it's just a reminder that as a leader, from time to time or all the time, your job is to look at those people and ask them, how can I help you? Mm-hmm. And that will develop the trust and respect and the camaraderie and the culture that can take you lots of great places. So talking about taking you to lots of great places, what are some of the accomplishments when you look back that you're most proud of?
Honestly, the people, getting the right people in the bus. I took a lot of pride in hiring and trying to get the right people that fit the values and wanted to do things the right way. And I look back and like, we won in that category. Like we had people that focused on serving the student athletes and cared about the institution and the alumni base. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of. Leaving was definitely a hard decision, but I know I left at a better place. And Millersville positionality was, not really in a great place. We were always in the bottom fourth of the league, and we'd have a team or two that'd be successful. And when I left, we were able to really position all the programs to be successful. And we were in the top quarter in just about everything. And I think a lot of it came down to just figuring out who we are. Fundraising was a major component to that. We were able to tie into the university's capital campaign and raise more money than we ever have for scholarships. And ultimately it was like, how do I get the coaches the resources they need? And I left, feeling really good about it being positioned for success and someone else to take the ball and take it to that next level.
Yeah, that's great. And you say someone else. Well, that someone else is Kate Corcoran, and I know that she feels fortunate to be able to come in and try to build on what you had established there. So you mentioned leaving. So start of 2024, you've pretty much graduated from a school, worked at that same school. You made the decision to leave and join Teamworks.
Yep.
So talk about what went into that decision and how has that gone for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'll share. I was happy. Like, I mean, it was my alma mater, and I love the leadership there. Um, but I also I have a young family. My daughter's now 3.5, and so I've just started rethinking, just my availability to her, and also being a great dad and what I wanted to be in my house. And that tied to just feeling like we accomplished a lot, and I might be ready for that next challenge. I didn't know what that was. I wasn't really looking. And fast forward, I'm following this company called Teamworks, and from a distance for a year or two, and just like, oh, this is enticing. And really the trigger was they acquired a company called Arms. And so Arms is a compliance and recruiting software. That's what we call it now. And we were using that product. And so in talking to some of the representatives at Teamworks, they had never really invested the time and money and space to really dive into the small college, really like Division 2, 3, NAI, junior college. And they were looking for someone to lead up business development. And so the more I talked to them, I was just blown away by this company, the vision of the leadership, where we were cutting edge, and how we could help people. And my job, I get to help athletic directors across the country. And so I've gotten to develop more relationships than I ever would have as an AD. I'm passionate about helping people. We come across, or at least we try to, from more of a consulting approach, not sales. And so, yeah, I've been in the job for a year, love it. And it's just been an incredible journey.
Well, it's obvious to me that you have, since you've been there, really encouraged them to continue to invest more at the, and some people don't like the term small college, but invest more at non-Division I levels.
Yep.
Part of that is a partnership with BOSCA, which I'm thrilled about. Another thing that I've seen recently, I noticed that you've added Jessica Huntley, a former commissioner, and then Kelly Perry, a former athletic director, somebody I'm really familiar with, to your staff. Talk a little bit about what their roles are.
Yeah. So, I mean, just zooming out a little bit, on Teamworks in general, we hire industry leaders. And so 9 times out of 10, the people in the organization have been a part of athletic organizations in some capacity. And so when I started, we were at 2 individuals in the non-Division I space. And so today we're at 9. And so we've been very, very intentional as a team of hiring people that intimately understand what our customers are doing, and be able to talk to them and understand those details and how we may be able to support them. And so fast forward, we're able to hire someone like Jessica Huntley, who was the commissioner of the American East Conference, and a very well-respected commissioner, understands intimately the knowledge about Division III. And then Kelly Perry, I know you and Kelly have a close relationship, but she was a former NAIA athletic director at North Texas at Dallas, and worked for you a long time at Oklahoma City, and used the product, used ARMS, which is compliance and recruiting now for us. And so when we're able to equip staff like this, I mean, it's just been incredible to be able to have these conversations. And both of them have been home runs. I mean, they're just genuine people, are able to connect. They're team players. I mean, it's just been an incredible group to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great. So I know you were recently at the NCAA Convention, and I just kind of wonder, what were, as you spent your time at the convention, what were some of the issues that you were, hearing about most often from administrators, and maybe what are some of the ways that Teamworks helps resolve some of those issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, closed door, full transparency. There's a lot of, Miles, this isn't getting easier. And so, when you dive in, okay, well, what does that mean? And so a lot of it is just the demographic of the student athletes changing and evolving. The demands, on the athletic administrators and coaches are making it, harder and harder to just do what they love. And then I think, just strapped for, the ability from an FTE perspective to be able to add staff. And so there's all these, we understand, when we're working in these spaces, you sign up for wearing multiple hats and being able to do anything. But also that's a lot on individuals, and that can wear on them. And so, where does teamwork come in? And that's really where we're able to solve a lot of the pain points for athletic administrators and coaches in really a couple ways. Is one, we're able to scale staff and really support them and retain staff by creating systems in one operating system. So whether that's in your operations, your performance, or your personnel areas, we have individual technologies that support all of that in an integrated system that's going to meet the student athletes exactly where they are. So we're able to help support your staff with those systems. But then most importantly, we're able to serve your student athlete in that demographic, because like the reality is they're going to be on their phone. And so how do we deliver all the communication, all the scheduling, everything that they're doing to a single application, and really streamline those processes for your department? And so, I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, Jim, but like, the more I talk to people, it's like, hey, we got to think differently about how we're doing our business. And for a long time in the industry, athletics has always kind of rejected technology or a little slower to adopt it. And I think what we're seeing, and, you look in the Division I space, and we usually trail behind that a bit, but we work with 99% of the Power 4 conferences that are using 7 or more of our technologies. North American Pro, the 5 major professional organizations, almost 80% are using a Teamworks technology. And now we're able to take that same exact technology, at a fraction of the cost, and deliver it to, honestly, let's call it what it is, the people that need it. And so how do we support their pain points? And it's what we're passionate about doing.
I mean, it makes an awful lot of sense for me. And you mentioned ARMS from a compliance standpoint, and I know you have scheduling, you have products that relate to NIL.
Yep.
Really just, and I would say that a lot of that comes from the fact that people like you who have lived it can help answer the question of, here's really what these administrators need to do their job. So I commend you for that. And just like I do, the business of running an athletic department, it's not an easy job. And made more difficult by a pretty significantly changing landscape.
Yep. And Jim, look, I was not a tech guy. Like, I still am not. It's crazy. I'm on that side now, but I also was looking for advantages, strategic advantages of where I could support our coaches and do it equitably and be able to provide that support to every single program and student athlete. And the reality is, like, that list of like everyone that needs staffing or more budget just keeps adding up, and schools just aren't getting that. And so, a lot of times when I'm talking to ADs, it's like, how do we just think differently about what those pain points are? And, most likely we have a solution, but maybe we don't. But like, how do we get creative here? How do I help you understand where technology might give you that advantage and really support your staff? And that's what we can do. Yeah.
Well, and it's got to serve a need. It's got to be easy to use.
Yep.
Because we all have diverse staffs from young people who might be more comfortable with technology, and older coaches who, I had coaches that I worked with alongside 19 years that I maybe got 2 emails the entire time. They were old school. They just didn't do it. So, well, let's switch gears a little bit. I guess actually kind of staying along that same line. What are some of your priorities for the year ahead then?
Yeah, I think first and foremost for us, this is really the second year that we've been in this space. And this is also the first year that we're like investing heavily in the NAI and junior college space. And so for us, and really grateful you invited me on here, is really just awareness. Like, what is Teamworks? And so a lot of people may have heard about us, maybe not, or maybe just had a perception like that's a pro thing, that's a Division I thing. And so we just really, at the end of the day, like, our priority is like, we just want to sit down and talk with people, get in front of as many people as possible, because like, this is a powerful tool. We have powerful tools to support. And so that's number one, really, really our priority. There's some other tools, I will say, like, coming out convention, NIL was a huge conversation. And so a lot of what we're doing right now is just consulting with people. We're the leader in NIL in Division I. We work with 2/3 of all Division I, and a lot of my conversations, like, where does this fit? Like, how does this fit in this space? And so just really trying to drive in, like, how can we support you in that? And then the other thing that we're really excited about is like our performance space. And so, this is really newer. It's like, how do you take like emergency medical records, athlete management systems, your nutrition, down the line, potentially strength and conditioning, and be able to put that into one system to be able to look at a student athlete? It's really just brilliant. And so I'm excited some of those coming down the line as well to support this space.
I got out just as NIL was sort of emerging. And my opinion at the time was, this is not going to be significant for us. You mentioned from the software standpoint, really operationally at a smaller college, we look at the D1s and we try to mimic it, many of the things that they do within the limitations that we have. In terms of NIL, I don't see any of us capable of handling that the way that Division I's do. So NIL is one of them, but what is your perspective on the way that you see college athletics moving forward?
Specifically NIL, Jim?
No, I mean in general. When you look at the road ahead, I mean, looking back 10 or 15 years, and this maybe isn't true in the PSAC that you were involved in, but there's been an awful lot of conference movement. There have been schools transitioning to different levels. What do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities lying ahead in college athletics?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. And, I think anytime there's times of uncertainty, there's also opportunity. And so I'm going to look at this from just the technology perspective. And the more we have conversations when there is uncertainty, people are tightening their belts financially. And so that's just a reality. And so, when I look and talk with people, I think efficiency is going to be king. And so it's really rethinking, like, how do you operate? And so for a lot of people, I think they're either making the decision of like, I got to clean this up now and get more efficient under a single system to be able to support our department, or I'm going to be behind. And 3 or 4 years from now, I'm going to be wishing that we were doing things more efficiently, because just the way of old isn't going to cut it. And so that I think ultimately to me is where this is heading from a technology perspective, is like efficiency is going to be king, especially in these small college spaces. Is we just have to do things differently. And a lot of that comes down to how do we take the systems we have, make it more manageable into a single system that meets our student athletes where they are.
Yeah, I guess I'd probably take it one step further. I'd say proactive efficiency. The business of higher education is just tougher and tougher.
Yep.
We mentioned Kate Corcoran earlier. Heck, the reason she's available to apply for and get the job at Millersville is because her university is closing.
Yep.
In the last week or so, we've seen Sonoma State announce that they're dropping not a sport, but their entire athletic department. And so, I mean, what do you make of something like that?
Yeah, it's hard to see. I feel for all those student athletes and coaches, and that was one of the things I always just like, couldn't even imagine being in a position to have to make those type of decisions. And so, I hope we're not seeing more of that, but also the reality is, like, there's a saturation in the market for colleges compared to high school graduates in a lot of states, and Pennsylvania is one of them where I came from. And so, I think a lot of times maybe if athletics wasn't an enrollment driver, like, schools are having to think differently. And so, like, how are we tying into admissions, and how are we rethinking our enrollment strategies, and technology is going to play a role in that. But unfortunately, Jim, I think these are going to be realities. And so you look at like wider, university systems, and they're trying to get more efficient. Like, how do we do more with less? Yeah. And so I think that's just the tough outlook for some schools.
Yeah, and a lot of it is reversing the trend.
Yes.
And I go back to Sonoma State specifically. They have a $23 million budget deficit. But it's not a surprise. I mean, when your enrollment has gone down 40% in 10 years, none of that is particularly surprising to you. And so anyway, technology has become such a critical component of everything we do. I mean, I go back to a day in athletics when email didn't exist.
Yeah.
I always tell people there was no Facebook when I became an athletic director. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. But what we know now is that whereas Jim Abbott on day one as an athletic administrator didn't have to have any understanding of social media, you by golly got to have an understanding of it now. And you got to be thoughtful about staying ahead, which is that proactive part, in my opinion. I'll tell you what, our time has gone kind of quickly here. I got one other question that has nothing to do with making anybody in the world better or not. But when you're in Millersville, you mentioned you went to college at Pitt. So
I was there 2 years.
What's the greatest organization, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm a Phillies fan. Yeah. They weren't able to convert me in those 2 years.
So it just so happens that you root for the teams that win most often?
Yeah. Okay. So I will say, though, a Millersville alum just signed with the Pirates. I think it was yesterday it was announced. So I'll be watching the Pirates a little more this year.
Okay. Well, you're in your area, you got lots to choose from. And in my area in Oklahoma, we don't have as many to choose from. Miles, I'm grateful to people like you that are willing to come on and just share some of their experience and share, some thoughts about where we're heading. And so let me just say thanks so much for taking the time to join us on our podcast today.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and I appreciate the relationship and also the partnership now that we have, and excited to be able to help your members as well.
Well, you bet. 2025 is going to be the biggest year yet for BOSCA, and we are thrilled to have Teamworks as a part of that. And just want to say thanks to our audience for listening in on another episode of Small College Conversations, and we'll see you again the next time. Thanks.